There are things in life we never forget. And there are questions that change everything. Mine was asked in a butcher shop on an ordinary Friday by a man who had no idea the hell he was about to open in front of me. My name is Dorothy, but everyone has always called me Dora. I'm 80 years old today, thank God. And if there's one thing I've learned in this long life, it's that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living a lie. But I didn't know that back in 1967. Back then, I was just a 32-year-old woman, mother of 3 young children, married for 10 years, a seamstress who thought she knew the man she shared her bed with every night. How wrong I was. But before I tell you this story that still hurts in my chest after so many years, let me make a request to you who are listening now. If you relate to this story, if it touches your heart in some way, leave that like down below, subscribe to the Grandma's Diary channel so you don't miss the next stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read all of them, really. All of them. And also tell me if you've been through something similar in life. Sometimes we feel alone in our pain, but when we see that other people understand, we feel a little less alone. So comment there, my dear, where are you listening from? Well, let's go. It was March 1967, Friday. I remember it was March because Mrs. Peterson's apple tree next door was full, and she had given me a bucketful on Thursday. I had made jam and still had some fruit stored in a bowl in the kitchen. Funny how we remember silly details, right? But I remember. I remember the color of those apples, the sweet smell that filled the house, the stains on my hands from peeling them. That Friday, I woke up early, as always. My husband Walter had already left for his auto repair shop. He always left at 6 in the morning. I would wake up with him, make coffee, warm up day-old bread on the griddle, spread butter when we had butter, because we didn't always have it, and watch him leave. Then I'd take care of the boys. Amanda, my oldest daughter, was 7 years old. She was a smart girl, sweet, already helping to take care of her little brothers. John was 5 years old, mischievous, always hurt, dirty from playing in the dirt. But he was a loving child. And Benjamin, my youngest, had just turned 2. He was still nursing, still wearing cloth diapers that I washed every single day in the sink. I was a seamstress, worked from home. I had an old Singer sewing machine that my mother gave me when I got married, and it was with that machine that I helped with expenses. I sewed everything, mended clothes, hemmed pants, adjusted dresses. I didn't earn much, but it helped. Walter always said his money was tight, that the auto shop didn't make that much, that we had to save, and I saved. Good Lord, how I saved. I had 3 skirts, 3, 1 navy blue, 1 brown, and 1 black, all mended. I sewed the patches myself, tried to disguise the holes, the worn parts. My blouses were remakes of clothes that my clients' employers gave me. I would take them apart, cut them again, make them fit me. My shoes were just 1 pair, those low black shoes that I polished every Sunday to make them last longer. The children, poor things, also had no luxury at all. Clothes were always hand-me-downs, always inherited from cousins, from neighbors' children. Toys were what we invented. Rag dolls, toy cars from sardine cans, kites made with bread paper and sticks. But we ate. We didn't go hungry. We had rice, beans, potatoes, squash from the garden, and meat. Ah, the meat. We ate meat once, twice a week when we could, and it was always chuck roast or ground beef or chicken wings or organ meats. Those cheap meats, the most affordable. The chuck roast I'd leave in the pressure cooker for hours to tenderize it because it was tough, full of gristle. The ground beef I'd stretch with breadcrumbs, grated potato to make it go further. The children ate without complaining, poor things. They didn't know there was anything better. And Walter? Well, he also ate. But always complaining, always making faces, always sighing, pushing the meat to the side of his plate, saying it was tough, that it was tasteless, that he was tired of it. I swallowed my anger and said nothing. I thought, he works all day, poor thing. That must be why he's irritated. That Friday, there was almost nothing in the pantry. The money Walter gave me for groceries had run out on Wednesday. I had stretched it, bought only the essentials, but there was no more meat. So in the morning, after giving the boys breakfast, after hanging the diapers on the line, after starting to sew a pants hem that Mrs. Miller had brought me, I decided to go down to Philip's butcher shop. The butcher shop was 3 blocks from home. It was a small, simple butcher shop, one of those old ones. It had a cement floor always wet, with sawdust thrown down to absorb the blood. It had iron hooks on the ceiling with meats hanging. It had that strong smell of blood, of raw meat, mixed with the smell of damp sawdust. Some women found it disgusting, but I was used to it. Mr. Phillips was the owner, a big, strong man, with an apron always dirty with blood, thick hands from cutting meat so much. He was serious, but he wasn't bad. He knew everyone in the neighborhood, knew everyone's name. He served well, didn't cheat on the weight, didn't push old meat on anyone. He was good people. I got there around 10 in the morning. There were 2 more women in line, Mrs. Carmen, who lived near the church, and Mrs. Lawrence, the shoemaker's wife. I waited. They bought, chatted pleasantries, commented on the heat, on Sunday service, on so-and-so's daughter who was getting married. Neighborhood stuff, you know? When it was my turn, I approached the counter. The counter was marble, cold, always with those little blood stains that never came out. "Good morning, Mr. Phillips." "Good morning, Mrs. Dora. How are you?" "I'm well, thank God." "And you?" "Ah, getting by, right? What will it be today?" "A pound of ground beef, please." He nodded, grabbed a piece of meat, started cutting. The sound of the knife hitting the board, that rhythmic thud, 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 always gave me a shiver. But it wasn't a shiver of fear. No. It was just the noise itself, loud, echoing in that small space. While he was cutting, he was quiet, but I noticed he looked at me sideways 2, 3 times. It seemed like he wanted to say something, but was stalling. You know that look of someone who has a subject stuck in their throat? After a while he stopped cutting, wiped his hands on his apron and looked at me with a kind of awkward face. "Mrs. Dora, can I ask you a somewhat delicate question?" My heart jumped in my chest. I don't know why, but it did. You know when you feel you're going to hear something bad? That was it. "You can, Mr. Phillips," I replied, trying to seem calm. He scratched his head, looked to the side, as if looking for the right words. Then he took a deep breath and said, "It's just that, well, I didn't want to meddle where I'm not called, but do you know why Walter buys 10 pounds of prime rib every single Friday?" I felt my legs wobble, I swear to God. I felt my legs go weak, as if the bones had melted. I held onto the cold marble counter to keep from falling. "What? What do you mean, Mr. Phillips?" He looked at me with pity. That look you never, ever forget in life. That look of someone who knows they're giving bad news, but thinks the person deserves to know. "It's been about 6, 7 months now, Mrs. Dora. Every Friday afternoon, around 5 o'clock, Walter stops by here and takes 10 pounds of the most expensive prime rib I have. Always the same thing, always 10 pounds. He asks me to separate the best one and wrap it up nice, carefully, as if it were a gift, you understand?" My mouth went dry. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I couldn't speak. I could only hear my heart beating loud, loud, loud in my ear. I tried to speak, but the words didn't come out right. Mr. Phillips continued, "Look, I know it's none of my business, but I've been thinking. It's every Friday, religiously, and always prime rib, the most expensive meat, and he always asks for it wrapped up nice, you know? It's not packaging for a barbecue with friends, no. It's packaging for someone who's going to take it home to make a nice meal." I tried to play it off. I tried. I swear I tried. "Ah, it must be for barbecue with his friends from the shop. You know how it is, right?" Mr. Phillips shook his head slowly, in that way of someone who's not convinced. "Mrs. Dora, excuse me for insisting, but every Friday for months and always 10 pounds and always wrapped up nice like that. I'm not trying to put ideas in your head. But I found it strange because you come here, buy a pound of ground beef, and he buys 10 pounds of the best prime rib. It was then that I felt it. I felt the humiliation descend like a bucket of cold water over my head. I felt shame squeeze my throat. I felt anger, confusion, fear. All together, all at once. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. My head was empty and full at the same time. How much is it, Mr. Phillips? That was all I could ask. $2.20. I paid. I took the small package, light, of that 1 pound of ground beef, 1 pound, while he 10 pounds, 10 pounds of prime rib. Mrs. Dora, if I said too much, I'm sorry, but I thought you should know, said Mr. Phillips, with that low, careful voice. I couldn't answer. I just nodded and left. I left that butcher shop with wobbly legs, with blurred vision, with that little package of meat in my hand. The street was full of sun, a strong March sun, one of those that burns. But I was cold. A cold inside. A cold that had nothing to do with the weather. I walked the 3 blocks home without seeing anything. I didn't greet anyone. I didn't hear anyone. I only heard that phrase echoing in my head. 10 pounds of prime rib every single Friday. 10 pounds. Every Friday for months. When I got home, Amanda was playing in the yard with her little brothers. She saw me and ran to me. Mom, Benjamin is hungry. I didn't answer. I went into the kitchen like a zombie. I put the meat package in the sink. I went to the small old refrigerator that made a terrible noise. I opened it. Inside, there was a piece of leftover chuck roast from Wednesday, wrapped in a cloth, 3 potatoes, half an onion, a container with rice from yesterday's lunch, and that was it. I picked up that piece of chuck roast. It was hard, cold, full of white gristle that looked like rubber bands. That's what we ate, what I ate, what my children ate, and he bought 10 pounds of prime rib every Friday. 10 pounds. Do you have any idea how much money that was in 1967? It was almost what I earned in a whole month sewing. 10 pounds of prime rib, the most expensive, finest meat, the meat I had never ever tasted in my life, the meat I didn't even know what it tasted like. I leaned against the sink. The tears started to fall. But it wasn't sobbing, crying yet. No. It was silent tears, the kind that falls by itself, without making noise. Tears of anger, of shame, of humiliation. I thought of everything. Of every time I mended my skirt to make it last a little longer. Of every time I dipped bread in coffee with sugar water to fool my hunger. Of every time I divided my piece of meat among the children and kept only the bean broth. Of every time he complained about the food, made a face, and pushed his plate away. Meanwhile, he bought 10 pounds of prime rib every Friday. For whom? That was the question, hammering in my head. For whom was this prime rib? He said he worked late on Fridays. He said he had a lot of work, that the shop got busy on weekends, that he needed to get ahead. He'd get home around 9-10 at night, tired, smelling of grease, barely spoke, ate dinner and went to sleep. It was a lie. Everything was a lie. I dried my tears with the back of my hand, took a deep breath. I tried to calm down. The children couldn't see me like this, couldn't notice. I washed my face in the sink faucet, cold water. I wet my face, my neck, trying to erase that horrible feeling in my chest. Then I looked again at that piece of chuck roast in the refrigerator and felt such anger that I almost broke that plate right there. But I didn't. I took a deep breath again, closed the refrigerator and thought, I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out who this prime rib is for. The day passed slowly. I couldn't sew properly. I pricked my finger on the needle twice. I burned the beans. I forgot the milk on the stove. Amanda asked if I was sick. I said no, that I was just tired. But it wasn't tiredness, it was something else. It was something I had never felt before. It was distrust. It was fear. It was anger. All mixed up, stirring in my stomach, making me dizzy. When lunchtime came, I made the food. Rice, beans, boiled potato, and that ground beef I had bought, which I stretched with breadcrumbs and onion to make it go further. The children ate. I barely ate anything. I wasn't hungry. I had a lump in my throat that wouldn't let food pass. The afternoon was slow to pass. I kept looking at the clock. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 4:30. 5 o'clock was the time Mr. Phillips said Walter stopped by. I thought about going there. I thought about hiding and watching, but I didn't go. I had 3 boys at home. I couldn't leave. And besides, what was I going to see? Him buying meat. I already knew that now. What I needed to know was where he was taking that meat. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I gave the boys dinner, bread with butter and milk. There was nothing else. 9 o'clock at night, I heard the sound of the gate. It was him. My heart raced. I stood in the kitchen, listening to his footsteps entering. He greeted the children, said good night to each one, told them to go to sleep. Then he came into the kitchen. Hi, Dora. What tiredness, my God. I looked at him, at his face, at his eyes, trying to find something different, some sign, some clue. But I saw nothing. He was the same as always, tired, smelling of grease, dirty work clothes. Is there dinner? He asked. There's rice, beans, and ground beef. He made a face. That face. The same face as always. Ground beef again. I took a deep breath. It's what I could afford to buy, Walter. He sighed, got his plate, served himself, sat at the table, ate in silence, making faces, pushing the meat to the side. I stood there, leaning against the stove, watching him eat. And for the first time in my life, I really saw. I saw how he ate without pleasure, without desire, as if that food were a sacrifice, as if he were obligated to eat it, but didn't want to. And there, in that small kitchen, with the dim light of the yellow bulb, with the sound of crickets outside, with my 3 children sleeping in the next room, I understood. He didn't like that food because he ate better elsewhere. He ate prime rib elsewhere. I spent that whole night awake, lying in bed next to him, listening to him snore, smelling the grease smell that was impregnated in his skin, even after bathing. I kept looking at the dark ceiling, watching the moonlight coming through the crack in the window, drawing a thin line on the wall. My head wouldn't stop. It was thought after thought, each one worse than the other. Who was the prime rib for? Why every Friday? Why did he lie saying he worked late? Where did he go? Who was he with? Was there another woman? That was the question I didn't want to ask, but that screamed inside my head. Was there another woman? Because you see, 10 pounds of prime rib is not a small thing. It's not meat you buy to eat alone. It's meat for a family, to make a nice meal, carefully prepared. It's meat to impress someone. I turned to the side, with my back to him. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't sleep. Every noise startled me. The wind at the window, the neighbor's dog barking in the distance, the creaking of the bed when he moved. It must have been around 4 in the morning when I finally fell asleep. But it was a bad sleep, full of confusing nightmares that I didn't quite remember when I woke up. On Saturday morning, I got up early. He slept in, as he always did on weekends. I made coffee, took care of the children, hung up clothes, sewed, but my head was elsewhere. It kept going back to the same thing, the prime rib, the butcher shop, the Fridays. During the weekend, I watched him. I paid attention to every detail, his clothes, the way he spoke, his schedule, trying to find something different, some proof. On Sunday, we went to the 8 o'clock service, as always. Him in front with John and Benjamin, me behind with Amanda. The church was full, as it always was. Pastor Arnold talked about forgiveness, about family, about the sacred bonds of matrimony. I sat there listening to those words and feeling a bitter irony in my mouth. Sacred bonds. Did he remember those bonds every Friday when he bought prime rib for God knows who? On Monday, life went back to normal. He left early for work. I stayed with the children and sewing. But I had made a decision during that weekend, to discover the truth. I wasn't going to stay there in doubt, eating away at myself inside. I needed to know. So I started planning. On the following Friday, I was going to do something. I didn't know exactly what yet, but I was going to do it. During that week, I continued observing everything. Every time he said something, I paid attention. Every time he left, I mentally noted the time. Every time he arrived, I smelled his clothes, looking for some different perfume, some sign, but I found nothing. He was careful, or I was going crazy. On Tuesday, Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor, came over for coffee. She was a good lady, a widow, who lived alone in the house next door. We were friends. She helped watch the boys when I needed to go out. While we drank coffee with bread, she commented, "Dora, you look tired. Are you sleeping badly?" "Ah, Mrs. Peterson, it's just that Benjamin is teething. He wakes up at night crying." I lied, poor thing. Put some clove oil on his gums, it helps. We talked about amenities, about life, about the children, and then, without planning, the words came out of my mouth. "Mrs. Peterson, can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear. If you suspected your husband was doing something wrong, would you want to know, or would you prefer to stay in doubt?" She looked at me seriously, picked up her coffee cup, took a sip, put it back on the saucer slowly. "Dora, the truth is always better than a lie, always. Because a lie eats away at you inside, makes you sick. The truth, no matter how bad it is, at least you know what you're dealing with. A lie is quicksand. You sink without realizing it." I kept those words in my heart. On Thursday, I went to my mother's house. She lived on the other side of town, in an old house where I had grown up. I took the children. It had been a while since she had seen her grandchildren. My mother was a tough woman. She had raised 6 children practically alone, because my father drank and didn't help at all. She had that dry, practical way of someone who learned to survive and didn't have time for niceties. While the children played in the yard, I sat with her on the porch. "Mom, can I talk to you about something?" "Talk. How did you endure all those years with Dad drinking, spending money, disappearing?" She looked at me with those tired, deep eyes. "I endured because I had to endure, Dorothy. I had no choice. I had 6 mouths to feed and no money. If I left home, where would I go? What would I do? A woman alone in those days, daughter, was a lost woman. So I stayed. But I don't think I did the right thing. I think I lived half the life I could have lived. Do you regret staying?" "I regret having you all." "Never." I went home thinking about that. Was I going to end up like my mother, living half a life, accepting crumbs? Friday arrived. I woke up with my heart racing. It was the day I was going to find out where that prime rib was going. In the morning I acted normal, made coffee, said goodbye to him, took care of the children, but inside I was scheming. Around 3 in the afternoon I bathed the boys, dressed them in their cleanest clothes. I combed Amanda's hair, tied it with a ribbon, put on my black skirt, the least worn, and a white blouse I had sewn myself. Then I went to Mrs. Peterson's house. "Mrs. Peterson, can you watch the boys for me for a couple of hours? I need to take care of something." "Of course, Dora, you can leave them. But is everything okay?" "You're pale." "I'm fine. I just need to take care of something. I'll be back soon." I left the 3 children with her. Benjamin cried a little when I left, but Amanda picked him up and distracted him. My girl was always my right hand. It was 4:30 in the afternoon when I left the house. The sun was still high, strong. The streets were empty at that time. Most people were still working or inside their houses escaping the heat. I walked near the butcher shop but didn't get too close. I stayed on the corner across the street, leaning against the wall of Mr. Wilson's pharmacy. From there I could see the butcher shop door. My heart was beating so hard I felt it in my throat. My hands were sweating. I dried them on my skirt several times. 5 o'clock. Mr. Phillips had said it was around 5 o'clock that Walter showed up. I stood there waiting. Some people passed by, Mrs. Linda with her shopping bag, Joe from the grocery store closing the door of the shop, 3 boys running, playing tag. 5:10, 5:15. Was he not going to come today? Had he changed the day? 5:20. Then I saw it. I saw his old pickup truck turning the corner. That old 1952 Ford pickup, faded blue, that made a terrible noise. I recognized it from afar. He parked in front of the butcher shop. My stomach turned. He got out of the pickup, wearing his work clothes, blue mechanic's coveralls all dirty with grease. He ran his hand through his hair, smoothing it, and went into the butcher shop. I stood there, stuck on my corner, watching, counting the minutes. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. He came out. He was carrying a large package, brown paper package tied with string. I didn't need to see it up close to know what it was. 10 pounds of prime rib. He carefully placed the package on the truck seat. He didn't throw it. He placed it carefully, like someone placing something important. Then he got in the pickup again. I pressed myself more against the pharmacy wall. If he looked my way, he'd see me. But he didn't look. He started the engine, that noisy engine, and left. I waited for him to turn the corner. Then I started following. It seems like something from a movie, right? But it wasn't. It was real. I was there walking through the streets of my town, following my own husband, with my heart in my mouth and my legs shaking. He went down Main Street, passed in front of the church, in front of the square. I followed behind, on the other side of the street, trying not to draw attention. Some people looked at me. I nodded and kept walking. Then he turned onto a street I knew, Maple Street. It was a residential street with nice 2-story houses, well-kept houses. People with more money lived there. I kept following. My heart was so fast I thought I was going to faint. He turned again. Another street, another. I counted mentally. 1 block from my house, 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks. He was 4 blocks from our house. And then he stopped. He stopped in front of a 2-story house, a light yellow house with a black painted iron gate. There was an apple tree in the front yard. There were flowered curtains in the windows. He got out of the pickup, got the package, opened the gate with a key. He had a key to that gate. He went in. I stood there on the sidewalk, behind a big tree in front, an oak. I hid behind the thick trunk, trying to control my breathing, trying to think, what do I do now? Knock on the door, scream, cry? I didn't do any of that. I stood there watching. The house had a large window in the living room, on the first floor. The curtains were open, you could see inside. And then I saw it. I saw a woman. She appeared at the window. Young, she must have been about 25, at most 30 years old. Long hair, brown, pulled back in a ponytail, pretty dress, floral, full-skirted, one of those dresses I saw in store windows and never had money to buy. And she was pregnant. Very pregnant. A big, round belly. About 7, 8 months by the looks of it. I felt my world collapse right there in that moment. I felt the ground flee from under my feet. I kept looking as if I were nailed to that sidewalk. Walter entered the living room. I saw him through the window. He put the package on a table. The woman smiled. She smiled in that wide, happy way. She came close to him, hugged him, and he kissed her. He kissed her on the mouth. My legs went weak. I held on to the tree trunk hard, so hard, that I felt the bark of the tree scratch my hand. But it wasn't just that, because then, from inside the house came running a child, a tiny little boy, must have been about 2, 2.5 around there. The boy ran to him screaming. I couldn't hear from outside, but I could see by his little open mouth, by his outstretched little arms. He was screaming something. He was calling him. Walter picked up the child, threw him up in that way fathers do. The child laughed. He laughed too. Then Walter opened the package, showed the prime rib to the woman. She clapped, excited. He put the child down again, pulled the woman close, hugged her and her belly at the same time. A family. I was looking at a family, his other family. Because you see, that wasn't an affair. It wasn't a one-night fling or weekend thing. That was a set-up life. It was a house. It was a child. It was another pregnant woman. I stood there, I don't know how long. It could have been a minute. It could have been 10. Time stopped. Then something caught my attention. The child came close to the window, stood looking at the street with his little hands resting on the glass. And I saw it. I saw that that boy had a birthmark on his neck on the left side, a purplish spot the size of a coin, just like the birthmark Walter had, just like my Benjamin had, because that birthmark was hereditary, passed from father to son. Walter's father-in-law had it, Walter had it, and Benjamin was born with that mark too. And that boy had the same mark. He was his son, there was no doubt. He was Walter's son. I did the math in my head. That boy was about 2 years old. Benjamin had just turned 2. They were the same age. I was pregnant with Benjamin when that boy was born. He had gotten that woman pregnant at the same time I was pregnant. 2 pregnancies, 2 children, 2 families at the same time. At the same time. I felt such a strong dizziness that I needed to sit right there on the dirty sidewalk, under that oak tree. I sat with wobbly legs, my black skirt spreading on the ground. I put my hand over my mouth so as not to scream, so as not to vomit, so as not to make noise. The tears started to fall, silent, hot, running down my face, falling in my lap, wetting my blouse. Everything made sense now. Why he never had money, why he said the shop didn't make money, why I went through hardship, why the children wore patched clothes, why he complained about the food at home, because he had another house to support, another woman, another child, and another on the way. He divided everything, the money, the time, the attention. He divided between 2 families, and I was left with the leftovers, with the tough chuck roast, while the other ate prime rib, with the patched clothes, while the other wore pretty dresses, with the simple house, while the other lived in a 2-story house. I was the second-class wife, the poor family, the family of sacrifice. The other was the luxury family, the prime rib family, the family he really chose every Friday. I don't know how long I sat there on that sidewalk. The sun started to go down. The sky was turning orange. That orange of late afternoon. Some people passed by, looked at me curiously. A lady in black clothes, sitting on the ground crying, but nobody said anything. In those days people didn't meddle. When I managed to get up, when my legs stopped shaking enough for me to walk, I got up. I cleaned my skirt full of dirt, dried my face with the back of my hand. I looked at the window one last time. They were having dinner now. I could see the table set, plates, glasses, candles lit. Candles. He had dinner with candles lit with the other one, while at home we ate with the dim light of the yellow bulb that barely lit up. I turned my back and started walking. I don't remember the way back, I don't remember anything. I only remember arriving at Mrs. Peterson's house, getting the children, thanking her and going home. The children asked if I was okay. I said yes, that I just had a headache. I gave them dinner, bread with milk, put them all to sleep. Amanda resisted, wanted to stay up waiting for her father. I said he was going to be late, that she had to sleep. When everyone was asleep, I sat in the kitchen, in the dark, without turning on the light, and cried. I cried everything I hadn't cried in 10 years of marriage. I cried for me, for the children, for the life I thought I had, and discovered never really existed. I cried until there were no more tears, until my throat hurt, until my chest burned. It was almost 10 at night when I heard the gate open, him arriving. I dried my face, took a deep breath. He came in tired as always, or pretending to be tired. "Hi, Dora." What a day, my God. The shop was packed. I didn't answer. I just sat there in the kitchen chair in the dark. "Why are you in the dark?" "Saving electricity?" I answered with a hoarse voice from crying so much. He turned on the light. The yellow bulb lit up the kitchen. He looked at me. "Are you okay? You look strange." I looked at him, at his face, at the man I thought I knew, at the man who shared my bed for 10 years, at the father of my children, and saw a stranger. "I'm tired." I just lied. "Did you leave dinner?" "I didn't think you were going to have dinner out." He frowned. "Why would I have dinner out?" "I don't know. Maybe because you have dinner out every Friday for months." He froze. I saw his face change. I saw the shock in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" About the prime rib, Walter. About the 10 pounds of prime rib you buy every Friday at Phillips's butcher shop. He went white. White like candle wax. I can explain. You can. So explain. Explain who the prime rib is for. Explain where you were just now. Explain why you have a key to a light yellow 2-story house on Maple Street. Explain who the pregnant woman is. Explain who the 2-year-old boy with the same birthmark as you is. He didn't say anything, just stood there, with his mouth half open, unable to invent a lie. And in that silence, I had the confirmation I already knew. It was all true. He had another family and I was just the first one, the one who got old, the one who didn't matter anymore. He stood there in the kitchen, holding the edge of the table to balance himself. The yellow light from the bulb made his face kind of greenish, sickly. Or maybe it was just because I was seeing him with different eyes now. Dora, I don't lie anymore. I cut him off. My voice came out firm, but inside I was shattered. Don't make up stories. Don't say it's a misunderstanding. I saw you going into that house. I saw you with her, I saw the boy, I saw everything. He pulled out the chair and sat down heavily. He ran his hands over his face, rubbing in that way of someone who's tired. But it wasn't tiredness from work. It was tiredness from someone who got caught. How long? I asked. He didn't answer. How long, Walter? 3 years. His voice came out low, almost a whisper. 3 years. 3 years of lies. 3 years living 2 lives. And she's pregnant again, isn't she? He didn't even deny it, didn't even try to soften it, just confirmed, like someone confirming it's going to rain tomorrow. And the boy is 2 years old. He's the same age as Benjamin. Silence. He looked at the floor. You got her pregnant while I was pregnant with our son. Dora. Things happened. I got up from the chair. Anger rose up my throat like fire. Happened. You didn't trip and fall on top of her, Walter. You chose. You chose every single day for 3 years. It's not that simple. Then explain to me how it is. Explain to me how you slept here, woke up here, ate here, and then went there. Explain to me how you looked at your children here and had another child there. Explain to me how you saw me patching clothes, saving on soap, dipping bread in coffee, and bought 10 pounds of prime rib for her. He kept quiet. He had nothing to say. There was no explanation that made sense. I work a lot, was what he said after a while. I work from sunrise to sunset. The pressure, the demands. I just wanted a place where I could breathe. And me and the children. We don't matter. What are we, Walter? The burden? The annoying obligation? It's not that. Then what is it? He got up nervous, started pacing back and forth in the kitchen. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to have to support everything, to have to handle everything. I wanted something that was light, that was easy. Something light, something easy. I was the weight, the other was the lightness. And the money, I asked? The money I thought was tight, that you said wasn't enough, that barely paid the bills. Where was that money? He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. I already knew. It was in the light yellow 2-story house. It was in her pretty dress. It was in the 10 pounds of prime rib every Friday. Do you know how long it's been since I bought new clothes for myself, Walter? 7 years. 7 years wearing the same 3-patched skirts. Do you know how long it's been since the children ate good meat? I don't remember. And meanwhile I couldn't finish. My voice broke. The tears came again, even though I didn't want to cry in front of him. Dora, I'll fix this. I'll break up with her. I will. She's pregnant, Walter. Pregnant 7, 8 months with your child, and has another small child who calls you Dad. How are you going to fix this? He was silent. You're not going to fix anything. You're just going to keep dividing time, dividing money, dividing yourself. And I'm going to stay here with the leftovers, with the crumbs. It doesn't have to be like this. We can what? I looked at him. Can continue. You think I'm going to pretend I don't know? That I'm going to accept? That I'm going to live knowing that every Friday you go there? Other women accept. It was like a slap in the face. Other women accept as if it were normal, as if it were expected for the wife to swallow it and stay quiet. Then go find those other women, because I'm not. I don't accept. What are you going to do, Dorothy? Are you going to separate with 3 small children? You have nowhere to go. You have no money. You have nothing. And there, in that moment, he showed who he really was. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't begging for forgiveness. He was threatening me, reminding me that I depended on him, that I had no choice. Get out of here, I said quietly. What? Get out of this kitchen now. He looked at me as if I were crazy. This is my house, and it's my kitchen. Get out. Go to the bedroom, go wherever you want, but get out of my sight before I do something I'll regret. He must have seen something in my face, in my look, because he left. He left the kitchen, went to the bedroom, slammed the door. I stayed there alone, with the yellow light flickering, with the heavy silence of the night. I sat down again in the chair, put my head in my hands, and there, in that kitchen, where I had made thousands of meals, where I had nursed my babies, where I had sewn late into the night, where I had lived my life for 10 years, I realized that nothing had been true. Everything had been a lie. Everything had been theater. And I was the only one who didn't know the script. The following days were the worst of my life. He continued sleeping at home, but we didn't talk. He would wake up, leave for work, come back late, have dinner, sleep. I took care of the children, sewed, made food, everything automatic, everything empty. The children noticed something was wrong. Of course they noticed. Children feel these things. Amanda asked me, Mom, why don't you and Dad talk anymore? It's grown-up stuff, honey, don't worry. But she worried. I could see it in her little eyes. I could see she was scared. On Sunday we didn't go to church. I said I had a headache. The truth is I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't pretend everything was okay. I couldn't smile at the neighbors, greet people, act normal. On Monday, my mother-in-law showed up, Mrs. Arnold, a tall, thin woman with all white hair, pulled back in a tight bun, always dressed in black, since her husband had died about 10 years ago. She had that hard, authoritative way of someone who thought she was always right. She knocked on the door around 2 in the afternoon. When I opened it and saw her there, I knew Walter had told her. Good afternoon, Mrs. Arnold. Good afternoon. Can I come in? Of course. She came in, sat in the living room with her back straight, her hands crossed in her lap, didn't even take her purse off her arm. Where are the children? Playing in the yard. Good, we need to talk. I sat in the chair facing her, my heart already squeezed. I knew what was coming. Dorothy. Walter told me what happened. He told you what exactly? That he has another family? That he has another child? That he's expecting another one? She made a disapproving face, as if I had said a curse word. You don't need to be rude. He told me about the situation, and he told me you want to separate, and I really do. Don't be foolish, girl. You have 3 children. How are you going to raise them? With what money? I work, I sew. Sewing? She gave a short laugh without joy. You think you're going to support 3 children sewing pants' hems? Wake up to life, Dorothy. Better that than living a lie. Lie? You want to talk about lies? You know what a lie is? It's you thinking life is a fairy tale. Men are like that, girl. They always have been. They always will be. They have needs, they make mistakes. And us women, we forgive and move on. Forgive? I felt anger boiling. You want me to forgive him having another family, having another child. I want you to be sensible, to think about your children. Do you want them to grow up without a father? Do you want them to go hungry? Do you want them to be pointed at on the street as the children of the separated woman? Better that than having a lying father. She got up from the chair angry. You're too proud. You always have been. Always had this stupid pride that's good for nothing. My son is not perfect, but he gives you a house, food, a name. There are women who don't even have that. He gives me leftovers, Mrs. Arnold. Leftover time, leftover money, leftover attention, while the other gets the good part. And you think it's going to be different alone? You think you're going to have something better? You're not young anymore, Dorothy. You have 3 children. No man is going to want you. You're going to be alone, poor, finished. Is that what you want? Those words entered like knives because part of me was afraid it was true. Afraid of being alone, afraid of not being able to handle it, afraid of making the wrong choice. I want dignity, I replied. But my voice came out weak. Dignity doesn't fill a child's belly. Think about it. She grabbed her purse, went to the door, turned to me. You have a week to think straight. If you don't back down, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. And she left. I stood there in the empty living room, feeling the weight of those words. Was she right? Was I being foolish? Too proud? 2 days later, it was my mother who showed up, Mrs. Sarah. She arrived early in the morning, without warning. She brought a bag with bread, milk, some fruit. I came to see my grandchildren, she said, but I knew it wasn't just that. We had coffee together in silence. The children ate the fresh bread, happy. After they went to play, my mother looked at me. Your mother-in-law came to talk to me yesterday. I closed my eyes. Of course she had. And so she told me everything, asked me to talk to you, to make you back down. And did you come here for that? She took a slow sip of coffee, looked at the old cracked cup I had since I got married. I came because you're my daughter, and because I've lived through this. I looked at her surprised. What? Your father. You think drinking was his only problem? There were women, Dorothy, more than one. Everyone knew, except you children. But I knew. I had never imagined that. Never. And did you stay? I stayed because I had 6 children and no money. Because in those days it was even worse than today. A separated woman was a lost woman. A woman of the streets. Nobody respected, nobody helped. So I stayed and died a little every day. She looked me in the eyes. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to die every day. But I also can't tell you it's going to be easy to leave, because it won't be. It's going to be hell. People are going to talk. They're going to judge you. They're going to turn their backs. You're going to go through hardship. There will be days when you won't have anything to give the boys to eat. There will be days when you'll want to give up. But do you think I should leave? She was quiet for a while, then answered, I think you have to do what you can live with. If you can live with the lie, stay. If you can't, leave. But whatever you decide, it's going to hurt. There's no easy way out. After she left, I kept thinking about everything. The days went by, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3. I continued living on autopilot. I woke up, made food, took care of the children, sewed. But I wasn't really alive. I was just existing. Walter continued leaving on Fridays, didn't even disguise it anymore. He'd leave early, come back late. I didn't say anything, neither did he. We lived in the same house like 2 strangers. The sewing orders started to decrease, clients stopped showing up. Later I found out from Mrs. Peterson that Mrs. Arnold had spread it around the church, at the market, in conversation circles, that I was crazy, that I wanted to leave my husband out of pride, that I wasn't trustworthy. And the women believed it. Of course they believed it. They preferred to believe I was wrong than to admit the same could happen to them. I was left without work, without income, completely dependent on him. That's when I really started to sink. I stopped eating properly, food wouldn't go down, it got stuck in my throat. I lost so much weight that my clothes started to get loose. I stopped sleeping. I'd stay up all night, staring at the ceiling, thinking. When I slept, I had nightmares. I stopped bathing properly. What for? For whom? I stopped combing my hair. I tied up any which way. I stopped sewing. The Singer machine sat there, gathering dust. The children started to worry. Amanda took over the house. At 7 years old, my baby was making food for her brothers, washing clothes, taking care of Benjamin. A 7-year-old child doing the role of mother, because the mother had collapsed. This is the hardest part to tell, you know? Because when we tell the story of overcoming, we want to skip this part. We want to go straight to the moment we got up, we decided, we won. But that's not how it works. Before getting up, we sink a lot. There was a day, I don't remember what day it was, it must have been about 2 months after I had discovered everything, that I was lying in bed in the afternoon. The children playing outside, far away. I heard their voices, but it seemed like it came from very far away. I looked at the ceiling full of moisture stains, cracks, spider webs in the corner, and I thought, what for? Why continue? Why get up tomorrow? Why live? The children would be fine without me. Amanda was already taking care of everything anyway. Walter could take them to the other house, to the prime rib house, where there was good food, nice clothes. They'd be happier there. And I could rest. Finally rest. Stop feeling this pain in my chest that never went away. Stop thinking. Stop remembering. Stop suffering. It was the scariest thought that ever crossed my mind, and at the same time, it was the most tempting thought. Because you see, when we get to this point, to this bottom of the pit, where the light up there is just a tiny dot, we don't want to climb, we want to stay there in the dark, where it doesn't hurt anymore. I lay there, looking at the ceiling, thinking about that. How long did I stay? I don't know. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. Then I heard the bedroom door open slowly and little footsteps coming in. It was Amanda. She came close to the bed, climbed up, lay down next to me, her small, skinny little body smelling of dirt and sun. Mom? I didn't answer. I couldn't. She curled up next to me, put her little head on my shoulder. Are you sick? I am. My voice came out hoarse, failed. Will you get better? I didn't know what to answer. She was quiet for a bit, then spoke with that thin child's voice. Mom, I'm scared. Scared of you going away. Scared of you disappearing. You're not going to disappear, are you? My heart squeezed so much, that I thought it would stop. Why are you scared of that, my daughter? Because you don't smile anymore? You don't talk anymore? You don't play with us anymore. It seems like you already left, but your body stayed. 7 years old. My daughter was 7 years old and already knew what it was like to see someone giving up inside. I turned to her for the first time in weeks. I really looked at her thin little face, at her worried little eyes, at her uncombed hair. Mom, come back, she whispered. I need you. John needs you. Benjamin needs you. We need the mom we had before. And then she started to cry. Crying softly, trying not to make noise. In that way children cry when they're afraid of bothering. I hugged her, squeezed her against me and cried too. And it was there, in that hug with my 7-year-old daughter, that I understood. I couldn't give up. Not for me, but for them. For my 3 children, who weren't to blame for anything, who needed me, who looked at me hoping I would get up. Because if I gave up, what was I teaching my daughter? That women give up when it gets hard? That women accept crumbs or die? No, I couldn't do that to her. I'm not going anywhere, I said, holding her face in my hands. I promise. I'm not going anywhere. And it will get better. I took a deep breath. I'll try. I promise, I'll try. That night, after putting the children to sleep, I sat in the kitchen, turned on the yellow light, got paper and pencil, and started making a list of what I needed to do, what I needed to find out, what I needed to have the courage to face. Because one thing had become clear. Either I got up or I died. There was no middle ground, there was no way to continue like that. Something needed to change, and that something was me. I looked at that blank paper, at that yellow light, at that kitchen where so much had happened, and wrote the first thing. Lawyer. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, not because I had slept well, I hadn't, but because I had a mission. And when we have a mission, the body gets up by itself. I took a bath. A real bath with soap, scrubbing well, washing my hair. It had been weeks since I had done this properly. The cold water from the faucet falling on my back woke me up completely. It was as if I had been sleeping for months and was finally opening my eyes. I put on my black skirt, the least worn. I ironed it with the coal iron that I heated on the stove. I put on the white blouse I had sewn. I combed my hair, pulled it back in a low bun. I put a little rice powder on my face to disguise the pallor. I didn't have makeup, never had, but at least I didn't look like a dead woman. I looked in the cracked little mirror in the bedroom. I recognized the woman who was there. It was me again, thin, tired, with deep, dark circles. But it was me, alive, standing, determined. Walter had already left for work. The children were still sleeping. I prepared coffee, heated milk, separated bread, left everything ready for when they woke up. Then I went to Mrs. Peterson's house, knocked on her door around 7 in the morning. She opened it still in her nightgown with a sleepy face. "Dora, is everything okay?" "Yes, Mrs. Peterson." "Sorry to wake you so early, but I need a favor. Can you watch the boys for me this morning? I need to take care of something important." She looked at me in a different way, as if seeing something she hadn't seen in a long time. "Of course, dear. You can leave them. Send them over when they wake up. And Dora, it's good to see you standing again." I went back home, waited for the children to wake up. I gave them breakfast, dressed them, combed Amanda's hair carefully. "You're going to stay with Mrs. Peterson this morning. Mom needs to go out for a bit." "Where, Mom?" Amanda asked. "Take care of some things, but I'll be back soon, I promise." She hugged me tight. "I'm glad you're better." I took the 3 children to the neighbor's house. I thanked her again and left. It was 8 in the morning on a Tuesday in June 1967. It was cold, that dry winter cold of the interior. I put an old shawl over my shoulders and started walking. Attorney Richard's office was downtown, near the main square. It was in an old 2-story house, painted faded yellow. There was a brass plaque on the door, Attorney Richard Chambers, lawyer. I stood on the sidewalk looking at that door. My heart beating hard, because going through that door meant there was no turning back. It meant publicly assuming my marriage was over. It meant scandal, gossip, judgment. But it also meant freedom. It meant dignity. It meant choosing to really live. I took a deep breath and went in. There was a small waiting room, with wooden chairs against the wall. An old table with old magazines, a smell of mold and old paper. There was no one there. A door opened, and a young woman appeared. She must have been about 20 years old with thick-framed glasses. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" "I don't, but I really need to talk to Attorney Richard. It's urgent." She looked me up and down. In that way, people looked at a woman who arrived at the lawyer's without her husband. "I'll see if he can see you." "What's your name?" "Dorothy." "Dorothy Miller." She disappeared through a door. I heard muffled voices. Then she came back. "He can see you now, please." I entered a room full of books. Books from floor to ceiling, on dark wood shelves, a large desk full of papers. And behind the desk, a man about 50 years old, graying hair, round glasses, brown suit, kind of wrinkled. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller. Please sit." I sat in the chair facing his desk, my hand